Which actually, now that you mentioned the music thing and the beats, this brings us back to the gypsies again. And gypsy music is fascinating. It's the last form of music left in Western tradition that it doesn't based on the the Pythagorean musical scale, the tonic scale of do re mi. It doesn't have that, and it's a very different kind of music. And I find whenever I listen to that live, play it has a completely different emotional resonance than to listening to even beautiful works of classical music or pop music or whatever. It has a very, very different feel. It just sounds intrinsically more natural to me or something.
Have you looked into the whole discussion going on at the moment about the harmonies and the scales and the solfeggio?
You're talking about how the Nazis altered the musical scale.
Someone did.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of this stuff that's very interesting to me as well. Why do all LP records turn at 33 RPMs? I find that very interesting, It seems as if that's an occult number. Excuse me. Pardon me. They turn at 33 RPMs, that's an occult number. Why that number? Does it tie in with the something to do with electric motors, that they find that speed gave you the best sounds? I'm very interested in that. And why were records originally wax records and gramophone records 78, which is also the number of cards in the tarot? I find that very interesting as well. It's just like. It seems the whole music business, right from its inception, seemed to have this occultic overtone to it.
But don't you think that it's also, it's not just conscious choice, that there is also a lot of influence from the subconscious choice? Of course, then you can get into the whole thing that these people have been putting these numbers and these symbols into our psyche. Using things like architecture and art, but then when you have you think you have the free choice, like what did they call the detector in the cyclotron? It's called the Aleph detector. Aleph being the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's just when you are so used to surrounding yourselves with these symbols, then when you have the ability to create an invention, like let's say a record player, then it would be natural to you to choose something that you are familiar with, something that's in the back of your mind, like something pre-programmed.
Yes, I agree with that. I do believe that's absolutely true. There could very well be technical reasons for why the motors turned at 78 and 33. I'm not that well versed in sort of, electromechanic motors to know that, but I just found that those numbers were very specific, and they were very particular numbers in terms of the occult resonance. And do these things impinge on people's subconscious? I absolutely think that's true. I think when people go into to study architecture, there'll be a certain element of their studies will be around, traditional and classical architecture, the golden section and so on, and things like the geometric shapes of various classical buildings like the Parthenon in Athens. And then they will subconsciously apply this even to things like everything from designing a school to a modern office building. I've seen that all the time, actually. I go around everywhere now, and modern buildings do have these, we'll call them, I guess, a homage, a sort of a subliminal homage to the classical traditions in architecture in terms of layout and design, and that's absolutely there to be seen. I've seen that even in things like in the way shop fronts are designed. It's not self-conscious. The actualization of the process begins at a subconscious level, from everything they get from their school books when they were in kindergarten, to even looking at the size and shape of a television screen or a computer monitor. These things are in there, and they manifest. Now, having said that, the original impetus behind them going back to the classical world, what was the initial driver of that, of developing these frameworks and these limitations in terms of these I guess we'll call them archetypal geometric forms. That's the only phrase I can really come up with now for them. But they say they came from nature, and in terms of the golden section, that definitely seems to be true in terms of the number sequences like the Fibonacci sequence and so on. However, it did take a long time. The Fibonacci sequence wasn't developed until the Renaissance, the early Renaissance. So it took a long time to get that far. So I'm one of these people that definitely comes from the belief that they're prior to, what we would call Babylonian civilization to today, that there definitely was and several other, very, well, I wouldn't say advanced, but very significant and complex would be the word I would use, societies and civilizations that existed before them. And I think that is actually the root of so much what we call classical literature, and a bit specifically in the Babylonian context, where basically all our Western culture comes from, in terms of those things. You can trace back just about so many corporate logos and everything back to symbolism used in Babylonia and Sumeria to depict certain gods in a graphical form. You can see them all there. You can see the Texaco logo and everything, and these things have been burnt into the subconscious from that time. But I don't think they started in Babylon. I think they came to Babylon from somewhere else.